Hey jewelry class, Mr. Mater here. Starting with a little tutorial on doing a wax carving of a pendant. In this tutorial, I will only be using the tools that you have in your kit. So we start off, I have a little sketch there of a design I kind of want to do. So I'm just going to take my block of wax that I got and I want to sand some of those edges smooth. They've got some saw marks in there. So I'm starting with the rougher grit and then moving up to some of the finer grits as we go here. I just want to give myself a nice surface that I can start with. So then moving up to the finer surface again, just a nice flat. Get all those scratches and marks off, so we have a nice flat surface to work with, and then I can get transferring my design onto the wax block. So as we go here, and that's just a simple Kleenex that I'm using there. I'm using that just to kind of get all the crud off and all the wax burrs, if you will, and then have a nice start to. So this is just the tool I made using a sharpened paper clip. Just sharpen that paper clip, and I'm just tracing the design onto the wax block, kind of going over some lines here and there. And again, I just took some tape and rubber band around the end of a paper clip and sharpened one point, so I can use that as a needle tool, and just give some of those tracing lines around that object. Now again, I'm only using some of the simple tools in the kit, and then going to use maybe a little X-Acto knife or a pocket knife in here, and that's pretty much it. So I continue to keep tracing those lines, and this is again using another tool, just one of the knives I sharpened with the files to get a good edge on there, and some points of the tools I modified. But again, everything you have in the kit, and this is really time consuming. This was not a fast process. Take your time. You can see there. It's now scratched into the wax, so I am ready to start building up the different layers. So now I'm just taking another modified tool that I made. I took one of the tools and kind of filed it and sanded it down so it's got a little triangle point. And I'm just scraping away some of the wax on the edges. I scraped a lot away, and then I'm just coming in with a pocket knife or any of the little knives. I think I use a pocket knife here, and I also use an X-Acto knife. But I'm just taking chunks of wax. If we were in the jewelry lab, we could use the spiral saws. But since we don't have those in our kits, a little more time consuming, but that's all right. So I'm just taking, again, scraping all those edges. Here's an X-Acto blade. Taking that X-Acto knife, chopping them off. Not a fast process. Take your time. You can't cut all the way through. You have to cut little chunks off at a time. Scraping the edges so I can clean up the lines and really work through getting that kind of rough shape carved out. Gets closer every time. I'll switch back and forth. So I did a little more trimming here. I'm cutting back and forth on some clips, cleaning up that edge. Again, that's just one of the pick tools that was in your kits that I sharpened and kind of put a knife edge on. And then just carving through, getting everything. You can see taking quite a bit of chunks off there. Clean off that work area and get ready to start fresh. So again, going back to the rougher grit, I'm going to sand down and just get the shape. Instead of cutting, I want kind of a little smoother edge, so I'm going to rough that shape in with some of the rougher grit and keep on building. Now, I've got my shape all sanded off, and I am just carving away all those negative areas in my design and just slowly working back through over and over, filling in those gaps. You can see you start to take away those areas. And eventually I'll take away all those negative areas until they're gone. Sanding the edges again. Sometimes when you sand, you get little burrs and things on the wax. So switching tools back and forth to where you can get all your edges. So I've sanded pretty smooth. And right here I am carving out the area on back because this wax was too deep to start with. And again, somewhere we would use a wax saw, but we don't have one. So I carved out the back and started chipping away and then using the sandpaper to get it back smooth. And then I'm just taking the edge of that tool and I'm kind of scraping off the top again. This is just smoothing, and then I'm going to round over those edges as I go. Now here I started carving out of the back because I want this to have a hollow design. So I'm concave carving in the back and just using that scraper tool. I'm just coming through and scraping a lot of that area off of the back. A lot of these clips here are sped up. So I've sanded down some. I've carved out the back here. And I'm just working on getting the shape and the size that I want. Now I've carved even deeper on all of the negative areas. So I've carved through This is just an X-Acto blade. I used all kinds of different scrapers in the files, and I got all my holes. Eventually, I carved all of those negative spaces all the way out, and I hollowed out the back a little more. So I'm starting to get that shape and just refinishing, sanding, going back through. So here, quite a bit of work has been done, and you have getting to some of the final shape. So I keep sanding, I keep working, cleaning up every edge, just working through, hollowing the back out some more. Again, this is a slow process. There's hours and hours of work in each one of these little clips. So here you can see almost done, almost a final product. I started cleaning up all the edges, got a nice background so you can see it. And right here, I want a spot for a chain or a ring to attach so you could put it on a necklace or anything like that. And I'm going in both sides using the file, and there you see a hole all the way through. So kind of a fast process. I cut some clips in there so you didn't have to watch all the work, but overall, just cleaned up all the edges, and the only tools I used were tools in the kit and some knives. So you can see I took a lot of that weight off that wax and left with a nice concave on the background, cleaning stuff up. So remember everyone, this was a time-consuming process. Sit down, take your time, carve that wax out. Don't rush through anything, and you too can make a nice wax pendant. If you want to do more of a sculpture or a little figure or something, go ahead and do that as well. But when you're done, shoot me an email with what you've created.